Hello, everyone. Kath Bentley, Business Development Manager here. Very excited to be on a very special call today. We've had a whirlwind tour of both Australia and New Zealand with the fabulous Julia Bickerstaff, and now we're even more excited that she is blessing us with a recording of her presentation. So, Julia, very welcome to you.
Thank you. It's really lovely to be here. It's lovely to do this again. This is now my 10th time. So hopefully I've got it. Hopefully I'm getting it right now. So I'll kick off. So I'm going to walk through exactly the same things that I did at each of the locations. So if you are listening in for the second time, expect the same stories and everything. And I will just start with a little backstory of how I got started with the 100-day goal, because I think it's interesting and it really shows that it came from a place of desperate need from me. So it started about 13 years ago. I was working full-time as a partner in a big accounting and consulting firm, and I had 3 small children, ages 4, 3 and 1. And I also was a regular on a show called Kosh's Business Builders, which is on Channel 7, and it's hosted by David Kosh, who a lot of you will know. And I loved doing that show. And I met a lot of small businesses through that show, and I started working with a lot of those businesses, but I was very busy. I had, my kids, I had my full-time job, and I had these other businesses I was working with. And so I had this sort of great idea that I would write a book to give to these small businesses, and then I wouldn't need to sort of help them one-on-one. And all seemed like a really good idea at the time until I started trying to write the book. And I felt very full in my life. I didn't really feel I had, the time or the headspace to write this book. But I decided to do it, to be honest, I decided to do a little bit every day for a period of time, which happened to be 100 days. And I got the book done, the book got published, and actually became a bestseller. But to be honest, you don't have to sell a lot of copies in Australia to be a bestseller. But I did the book, and that was a very sort of seed of this idea of the 100-day goal. But I did never expect to talk to anybody about this. This was just a little thing that I'd done once. And then I actually left my full-time job and I started a business. And first of all, the business, took off. It did really well, and then it sort of started to plateau. And I had another child too, so I had this business, another child. I actually had another business as well. And again, I was sort of very full and trying to work out how I could grow my business at the same time as do all the other things that I had on my plate. And I thought back to when I wrote this book, and I thought, I wonder if I could use the same technique. And I did, and so I carried on just doing that myself, these little sort of things this method which I'm going to show you, little 100-day goals. And it would have really continued just me doing it if it hadn't been for the fact I was asked to go and speak at a conference in Adelaide about 4 years ago. And it was a big women in business conference, and when I'd gone there, I'd given a talk about pricing, and that was all my talk was about. And I was waiting to fly back, actually, and listening to the speakers. But the final speaker hadn't been able to arrive. And so the organisers of the conference asked me if I would do the final, wrap up and the big yeehaw at the end of the conference. And I said yes first, and then thought afterwards, oh gosh, what have I let myself in for? Because now I don't really know what I'm going to say. And I really couldn't think about it. Nothing came to me. And then literally just as I was walking onto the stage, I thought, what I'll do is I'll talk about this little process that I use, which to myself I call the 100-day goal. And I'll talk about that, and that might be useful for other people. And so I gave that talk, and I survived my little 20-minute stint on the stage. And when I came off the stage and busied myself ready to go home, a whole lot of participants came up and asked me if they could join the 100-day goal. And I thought, there isn't really anything to join. But I went and created a MailChimp list, gave them all the URL, and then, flew back to Sydney thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to talk to everybody? What am I going to send them emails about for this 100 days? Because it was just a methodology that I'd used. Anyway, I sent a daily email, and I didn't think it was particularly good what I'd done, but it must have captured their attention, because at the end of the 100 days, which happened to be Christmas Eve, when I thought I was never going to do the 100-day goal with anybody ever again, they said, oh, when does the next one start? And at that moment, I thought, you know what, there is something to this process. It doesn't just help me, it obviously really helps other people too. And so I boldly said, well, we'll start again on the 1st of January. And then I literally spent between Christmas Day and New Year's Eve turning it into something really much better, and I started off going. And since then, the 100-day goal has been used by more than 300,000 people. So it really is something that's a simple methodology which captivated people. And during that time, with everybody I've worked with, I've used it as an opportunity to make it better, to learn more, to research more around the important way the brain works, which is sort of fundamental to the 100-day goal. So that now, you know, I sort of think I bring you something which is a little bit like a sort of a combined effort of all the 300,000 people who've been along beforehand, plus the research that I have done. So that's a little backstory on it, which I just think is a useful place to know. And I have been using this myself, you know, for 13 years and grown a pretty successful business out of it. So
I love that story, Julia. I love that when you share that story, because it shows to me the proactiveness that you took, the need that people had for this little idea of yours that is grown phenomenally and impacted 300,000 people along the way. So that is, I love it. It's a great story. Yes. Excellent.
Thank you. And I think it is that thing that I thought, to be honest, you know, I thought I was the only one struggling with this, and then I realized I wasn't at all the only one struggling. Actually, we're all struggling.
Yeah.
So
we're going to do yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we're going to do a very quick exercise. I'm not going to spend a long time doing this exercise. It's you know, we don't really want silence on the webinar, but this one I think is really useful to do just for 1 minute. So if you've got your handout or a piece of paper here, I'd like you to do this little exercise, and I'm going to explain afterwards why we're doing it. But I want you just to spend a minute writing down 20 dreams. So I want you, and you can start now and I'll chat away. I want you to think that if time and money and skills and knowledge and, you know, family responsibilities and all that stuff, if none of that was an issue, what are the things that you would just love to do with your life? You know, imagine if it was a blank canvas, what are the things that you would like to do? Maybe something around traveling or experiences or being well known for something, or maybe it's some desire that you've always had to be an actress, or it could be anything. But just try and very quickly write down the first 20 things that come into your head. And we're not going to, I'm going to keep chatting while we're doing this, so you can ignore me. This is an exercise which you can do again later. So we're only going to do it for a very short time now, but it is useful. So I'm just going to just have a little sip of water, because it's very hot here in Sydney, and all our electricity went off before, which made me a bit worried about how we're going to do this, but it all came back on again. So, so I'm back in business. Okay, so if you've had a go at writing down those dreams. Now, this is the reason I get you to do this exercise. There's 3 very good reasons for it. And this is an exercise that you can do during your 100-day goal or any time when you need to trigger these 3 things. So the first reason that we do it is it's a tuning in exercise. Because right now, we're probably all sitting here thinking, you know, we've sort of rushed to join the webinar, and you might be thinking, oh, I mustn't forget to, you know, put the laundry on or feed the dog or get back to, you know, my work colleagues about this, or I mustn't forget to pick the kids up or get something ready for school. And we've become very, our minds race an awful lot around the here and now and what we need to be doing. And this exercise helps us move from our conscious brain into our subconscious brain. Actually, Kath, can you move the slide along? Mm-hmm. And our subconscious brain is the part of the brain where that's responsible for goals and dreams and expansive thinking. But we live very much in a conscious brain, and that conscious part of the brain is sometimes called conscious Caroline. It's like having, you know, 2 people go for coffee, and conscious Caroline just goes yap 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 all the time, and, you know, little subconscious Sue's just sitting there with things to say but doesn't get a word in edgeways. So this is a very good tuning in exercise. But it's more than that. It does two other things as well. One of them is that it's when we tell our brains that dreams are important, around our subconscious brain, there's like what's called a barrier called the reticular activating system. And that barrier stops 99% of information that's in the environment getting into our brains. So there's so much stuff we don't see and we don't hear because our brains don't allow us to see it. In fact, our eyes only see and our ears only hear what our brain tells it to. You wouldn't believe how much stuff we're missing. And the thing is, we need to prime our reticular activation system. And thinking about dreams sort of opens it up to being, to thinking, oh, this is important. And so in terms of a session like this, thinking about this is now opens up your brains, your subconscious brain will be more inclined to absorb the information that I'm saying and take it in and, synthesize it. So that's another reason why we do it. And the third reason is a really fun reason, but also in our subconscious brains is what's called the dopamine reward system in the brain. And that's where, when we think about a dream, and like just say, right, I'm just going to say now, imagine I said you have won $5 million. So just imagine winning $5 million and you think about all the things you could do with it. Now, your brain right now believes that you actually have won $5 million and it's getting really, really excited. And it's sending a burst of dopamine across your subconscious brain. And that dopamine latches onto some special receptors that are in there. And those receptors do something which makes us feel motivated and energized. And our brains can't distinguish between what we want to happen and what's actually happened. And so doing this exercise actually gives us a bit of an uplift. And sometimes, especially around lunchtime, which is a bit of a, sleepy time for a lot of us, that's actually true for everyone's biorhythms. Doing an exercise like this gives us a nice little bit of energy and a bit of a jolt. So that's how we do it. And it's, if you're ever feeling a bit flat or, you're just sort of feeling very much cluttered in the present, just do this 20 dreams exercise and it'll change how your brain's feeling. Okay, we might move on to the next slide now. Kath? Thank you. So at this time of the year, especially, actually it's the 31st of January today, but especially around sort of the 1st of January, we tend to set off with our really great intentions of what 2019 is going to be like. And we have all these plans and good intentions. It's going to be a different year to last year. And, something sort of goes wrong. You probably think back to last year and the year before and the year before. And we often don't really manifest our good intentions. And we're going to have a look at what gets in the way. But first of all, I might just flick to the next slide, Kath, which just makes me giggle. So I'll give you 2 seconds to read it. And actually, although that's a cartoon, it's not really so wrong. So we'll go on to the next slide.
I think this is so true for many of us, though, Julia.
Oh, yeah. No, look, I have to say, it's completely true to me. Yeah. I've got 4 children and laundry is the bane of my life. And all the other stuff. I mean, that is the thing. It's all those, there is so much of that. And we carry a big mental load of that because it's not just a physical thing of doing it, it's remembering to do it. But this is, so moving on to hear about why this is a little tool which helps explain why we find it hard to sort of manifest and actually get on with our good intentions. Now, this little chart I call a heart chart, and there's one in your or life in boxes. There's one in your handout. Basically, there are 4 different boxes, and the 2 boxes at the top are what we call important to your pillars, and I'll talk about what pillars are in a minute. And the 2 boxes at the bottom are what we say are sort of neutral to pillars. And the 2 boxes on the left-hand side are things that we have to do now, and the 2 boxes on the right-hand side are things that we can do whenever. So all your tasks in a day, everything that you do in a day will fit into one of these 4 boxes. Now, I'll just pause there and explain what pillars are. So pillars are the sort of themes that are really important to your life. So to give you an example, my 3 pillars are my family. My family is really important to me. My work, which is helping people lead fulfilling lives, so doing this sort of thing, that's really important to me. I really enjoy it and I get a great sense of purpose from it. And my 3rd pillar actually is my own sort of health and fitness, because I felt that was not being, I felt I wasn't paying attention to that. And so I sort of made that my 3rd pillar. And I'll explain, you'll see why understanding what your important things are is important. There's a jewelry designer in the US. I was listening to a podcast with her a few weeks ago, and she actually talked about her pillars in the podcast. And her pillars were fashion, because she's a jewelry designer, philanthropy, and family. And on my website, which is 100daygold.com.au/Norwex, I've put some resources on there, including this podcast interview with her where she talks about pillars. So if you're interested in pillars, there's something else that you can go and listen to, because I'm not going to talk about it a lot now. But a useful exercise for you is think of, what are your 3 pillars? I recommend sort of thinking of 3. What are your 3 pillars? Now, when it comes to this chart, the tasks that are in that sort of, pink area are tasks that are important to our pillars and need to be done now. So mostly these are things that every day you sort of tend to put on your to-do list. They're really important, and we're happy to do them, and they need to be done today. So me doing this webinar right now is a task that sits in my pink box. And my family is very important to me, and I like being involved in my kids' sport, and I have to do that later today. That would sit in that pink box. All sorts of things sit in that pink box. And it's really fun to actually use this chart and actually write down what tasks you think fit in each box. It creates quite an interesting picture. Underneath the pink box, down where that blue car is, these are tasks that you do today that you need to do now, but they're not important to your pillars. They're either neutral or sort of negative to your pillars. They don't impact, they don't sort of help you grow your pillars. And things that tend to fall into this are, to be quite honest, the boring things like laundry and all that sort of stuff that you have to do, but you don't, particularly relish. You don't think it's really sort of growing your pillars. And the other thing that fits in there is things that other people ask you to do. So I know how often somebody asks you a favor and you say yes and do it, and you spend time doing that rather than something that's important. And then the other thing that fits into there are the things that just unexpectedly just turn up. And so those are things like, the other day I came out of my house, had a flat tire, had to go and sort that out. It's just annoying. So what you find is a lot of stuff creeps into that box down the bottom. Then over on the bottom right hand side, that yellow one, that's stuff that doesn't have to be done today and isn't important to your pillars. And that stuff tends to be the fun stuff. So, watching a Netflix movie, that would fit into there. It doesn't need to be done today and it's not important, but it's nice to do, and that's fine. So that leaves us with one little square left, and that's the green pencil in the top right hand corner. And these tasks are things that are important to our pillars, but they don't need to be done today. And a key thing that fits in there is growing your business. So back when I was explaining about how I was really busy and I was writing a book for me was important. I really wanted to do it. It's important to my pillars. It felt really important to me, but I didn't have to do it today or tomorrow. There wasn't like a deadline. I didn't actually have to start doing it. And when I started running my business, what I found was that I was very full of things in that pink box, because with a business, there's a lot of things that just have to be done today. And, it's important to the business, but it's not doing the extra stuff. So I had that box all full. I had 4 kids, which were pretty much filling up my blue box down the bottom, having a little bit of fun. And basically, there wasn't really any time left for those things that were important but didn't have to be done today. And so what I'm actually going to show you today is a technique for moving those green circle things over into where the pink circle is. But just first of all, before I do that, Kath, can you just move on to the next slide? and slide after that, sorry. So just quickly, because I think this is really interesting to think about. So what happens in everyday life, and that in the box on the left hand side, is that we don't get time to do our good intentions. So that's the importance and whenever. So you see that box is blank. But then what you find happens, you get busier and busier with things, and actually we stop doing the stuff that's important to our pillars and needs to be done now, and we end up feeling that we're doing lots and lots of stuff that's down in that, you know, really not important stuff, but we just seem to be very, very busy. And then eventually sometimes we don't even have time for fun. And so we end up in that right hand box with just, you know, the right hand image with just a little blue box colored in. And we can feel that we're just doing, we're sort of treading water. We're just doing stuff. And that's when you feel very, very frustrated. And so if you or anybody you know feels very frustrated with their lives, it's probably often because we're stuck in that place. Okay, next slide, please.
Love that, Julia. Really sings to me.
Thanks, yeah, look, I really encourage you all to use the handout and actually for a day or two, write down all the things that you do and put them in the relevant box. So work out whether, you know, they're urgent or they can be done whenever, and whether they're important or not important, because it's so interesting to see. And quite quickly, you sort of go, oh, this is why I'm not getting things done, because I'm bogged down in the blue box.
And I would expect, I'm sorry, Julia, I'd expect at this time of year for many of us with children going back to school, we're in the blue box because we're doing school shoes and school books and, you know, uniforms and getting
100%
and all that sort of stuff. So that's why it's singing to me. I can completely understand how we can get stuck in those sorts of situations. So yeah, I love
100%. And it's so good to get this tool into your head. I actually sometimes think I can be doing something. Actually, I had a day like this on Sunday when I felt a bit like, oh, today just feels like it's been a waste. I was thinking it's not a waste, it's been a blue box day. Yeah. And in fact, I was actually sorting out all my kids, because as you know, I was away this week, so I was sorting out all their books and pens and shoes and, you know, everything, plus a whole lot of other stuff. And it just felt really like I felt I needed to do some other thing else as well to make it feel like a good day. So basically the technique that I'm going to share with you is all about moving our good intentions, moving that little green pencil, and I'll explain the relevance of the pencil in a minute, over from that, you know, whenever I'm not ever going to do it, to actually putting it in today, but putting it in today in a way that we can actually do it and it doesn't, you know, push everything else aside. So if we can have the next slide. And the one after, actually, sorry. So what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through this method which I use called the 100-day goal, which has helped me, helped me enormously do the things that were my good intentions. And there are 4 parts to it. I'm going to explain why it's 100 days. I'm going to walk through how you choose your goal. I'm going to explain the very important concept of micro actions, and I'm going to talk about why we need to do a little something every day and how to fit it in every day. So on to the next slide. So the first thing that's important is why we do it for 100 days. And this is all to do with the way that the human brain works. Our subconscious brain is very, very good at helping us with goals, but it has a limit to it. It can't manage periods of time that are longer than 100 days. So when you set off at the beginning of 2019 with a goal for the year, your brain says, oh, well, that's okay. I've got 265 days to do nothing and I'll do it all in the last 100 days. Our brains just can't compute big periods of time. So anything more than 100 days is just, we just can't do it. On the other, I'm just going to, sorry for a second. The actual website for this is the 100daygoal.com.au/Norwex. It's just, I just saw that in a chat box. And I just wanted to explain that.
Trina's on it for us, so that's good.
That's right. Oh, she has, sorry. Then the thing about, you're probably often seen on Instagram and Facebook and in the media, people running 30-day challenges. And a 30-day challenge is really useful for something like, say, Dry July, where you might say, okay, I'm not going to drink alcohol every day in July. And that's great and that's fine. because it's just a case of just turning up and just not doing it for a period of time. But in something that's important enough, like it's a really good intention, and something like growing a business, you need to put effort in and you need to see the rewards of that effort. And the trouble with 30 days is that you can find that you put a lot of effort in, but you've not seen the reward for that. And when that happens, you don't get the feel good for having done it, and you never want to do it again. So if you don't see the benefits, if you spend 30 days growing your business and you don't see the benefits, you're not going to really want to do it again. Whereas with 100 days is long enough for you really to see amazing things happen. And then at the end of it, you'll go, wow, I just really want to go and do it again. And in fact, that is what happens. People do 100-day goals over and over and over again. And often I find at the end of 100 days, people say, oh, I don't want to stop, I want to carry on. And I say, no, you have to stop and reflect back. Take a couple of days to do that, a couple of days or a few days to plan. I recommend a gap of 20 days between the different 100 days, and then we start again. And I can guarantee that if those same people, if they'd set off on a goal for a year, if they were still going after 100 days, certainly wouldn't be feeling so enthusiastic. But in this method, our brains actually love going from cycle to cycle to cycle. So 100 days is important. The next slide. So we are going to do a 100-day goal together. Now, you're going to pick your own goal. You're going to pick your own things that you're going to do. But to get us actually doing this, we're all going to start one, and it's actually tomorrow. So if you haven't heard me speak about this before, you're just doing it for the first time, I know that it will feel like a lot to do before tomorrow, but you can spend the first couple of days getting ready. That's fine. So we're going to start tomorrow and we'll finish on the 11th of May. Now, it's important that we all start at the same time, because if we don't, and you might say, oh, well, tomorrow's not a great day for me to start, so I think I'll start on Saturday, or I don't want to start on Saturday, I think I'll just start on Monday. Oh no, Monday's quite busy, I think I'll start on Tuesday, and you'll never get started. So the point is that we all start together. And I'll talk about this a little bit towards the end, but there's a couple of things I'm going to do to help you. One is that I send out a daily email for the whole 100 days. It's just a fun, nice email. It has a little inspiring thought, a question for you to think about, and it's just a little bit of encouragement. And the idea is it lands in your inbox. You look in your inbox and you think, oh yes, I mustn't forget to do my 100-day goal. And it's as simple as that, but it's nice. If you find that email is a little bit irritating, then it's sort of doing its job, because what happens when we feel irritated about something, it's because it's preying on our conscience. And if it's preying on your conscience, it's because you didn't intend to do, you're thinking, oh, I was going to skip it today, but you'll feel bad about skipping it, and so it makes you actually do it. And you need to register for those emails, and that's on that email. If you go to the page 100daygoal.com.au/Norwex, the first paragraph there's a link to click, and that's how you get the emails. We can't just sort of, register you directly. So that's one thing that I'm doing. And the second one is the Facebook group. Kath, has everyone got a link to the Facebook group, or will they have that?
No, they haven't been sent a link. They haven't been sent a link to the group, sorry. What they can do is simply go to Norwex 100-day goal and ask to join it on Facebook. No, I'll have it written up at the end of this presentation, Norwex 100-day goal. So you've got two actions to take, everyone. The first one is to sign up for the 100-day goal, which Paula Taylor has put up the correct address there in the chat box. So you can use that address there. It is on the presentation later as well. And that signs you up for the emails, as Julia said. And then the second step is to ask to join the Norwex 100-day goal Facebook group. Okay, so
and I've also, sorry, Catherine, I didn't interrupt you. I've also put in the first day's email, I've actually put a link to the Facebook group as well.
Brilliant, great.
Just to make it all easy.
Yes.
And in the Facebook group, I'll be there to help, but it's also there to chat amongst yourselves, to support each other, to share these things called micro actions, which we'll be talking about. And there's a nice feeling when you go through something together like this for 100 days, and it just helps us all keep the energy up.
Yeah.
So
Joe has just commented this group is not coming up. Just Meredith is the admin on it, Joe, and I would say because we're launching tomorrow, being the 1st of February, being our first day of the goal, that might be why. But let me check that out afterwards and I can confirm that, okay? Sorry, Julia, back to you.
No, that's okay. That's easy. Okay, so we might have the next slide. So what we're going to do now is look at actually picking your 100-day goal. And it's really important to pick the right goal for you, because if you're not engaged with your goal, if you don't really want your goal, then you'll find it really hard to create the energy towards achieving it. Whereas if you do want it, then you will. So a goal is very personal. Nobody can set a goal like this for you. People that can encourage you around something, but you've got to really engage with it. So there's 4 different parts to picking the goal. There's the theme, which is what do you want to change? Now, because we're here to grow our Norwex businesses, I'm going to assume for the rest of this that what you want to change is your Norwex business. You want to grow it. Then the next thing we look at is why you want to change it, and we've got a little exercise on that. Then we're going to look at how are you going to measure your success? What is the thing that you're going to measure it against? There's a few different ways of doing this. We'll look at that, and then we're going to look at how big to make your goal. So we'll go on to the next slide. Oh, the one after, actually, sorry. So the first thing we're going to think about is why you want to grow your Norwex business. And this is something which I'm going to suggest that you have a think about this evening. I'm not going to give us lots of time to do that now. It being a webinar, it's sort of a bit odd to have lots of silence. But I want you to think about it. Now, if you move on to the next slide, Kath. So if you think about it's Christmas 2019 and you're looking back over the year and you're thinking, oh, I'm just so pleased that I achieved what I did with my Norwex business because it has enabled me to, then write down what those things might be. And they really can be, these things are very personal. It's about what do you want out of your business? So it could simply be that you want, you have a financial need for it. So you want it to pay for a holiday, or want it to pay the bills, or maybe you want to, grow a business where you don't have to be working in it all the time. So you've got a team and all that sort of, there's lots of different parts to it. Or maybe your real why for doing it, the really reason you want to grow your business is because you want to spread the message of healthier homes and looking after our environment, and maybe that's really important to you. Or maybe you just really want to help other people grow a business, and that's why you want to recruit other people into it. And then or it could just be, it's just a lot of fun having parties, and that's why I do it. But what you're going to do is you're going to think about why you want to pick this goal. So you can have a little think now, write a couple of things down, and then what you're going to do is look at all the whys you come up with, because I like to write a list of all of them, and then think, okay, which is my most important one? And then that's important for the next bit. Okay, so I think we'll go on to the next bit now, Kath.
Okay.
So when you've worked out what your why is, then we need to think about what we're going to measure. And I'd just like to think for a minute here about the difference between a goal and a challenge. So when we set ourselves a goal, we're interested in the outcome of it. So the end result is what's important. And we might have a particular process to get there, but we might change the process if that process doesn't work. And we might enjoy the process of doing it, but we might not enjoy the process of doing it. And compare that to a challenge where the challenge is the process. So remember when I talked about, say, doing Dry July? Dry July is a challenge. The process is the thing. Every day you don't drink alcohol. There is no outcome at the end. I mean, you might feel good that you've done it, but there isn't a sort of a a thing that you say, oh wow, look, I am different. This is a different thing now. You do it for the process. And I've got to, and it's really important to get this right, because otherwise you can lead yourself to be a bit disappointed. And I've got a funny story about this, so which I think is a good way of remembering it. So years ago, 19 years ago actually, back when Sydney was hosting the Olympics, they were running a marathon. You could do a marathon before the Olympics and be the first people to run into the stadium. And I was quite excited about the thought of running into the stadium, and which was a little bit weird because I was not a runner at all. In fact, I could never really, run and breathe at the same time. But I really wanted to run this marathon, and my husband, who is a runner, thought it was hysterical. I wanted to do this, but I entered the marathon, and I decided I was going to do it. And I sort of had a secret reason for wanting to do the marathon, and that was that I was actually getting married about 6 weeks after the marathon. And I sort of thought, well, if I train for 4 months and run a marathon, then I will probably drop a dress size by the time it's my wedding, and that'll be really fantastic. So I trained really hard for this marathon, and I ran the marathon. It nearly killed me. I ran it, and that was all good. That was on the 30th of April, and I was very proud of myself. And then about a week later, I went to have my final dress fitting. And when I went in to see the dressmaker, she measured me and she says, oh, you are a very unusual lady. And I was thinking, well, I am very unusual because I have just run a marathon. And she said, everybody who comes in here, they normally drop a dress size in their final fitting. And I was sitting there thinking, oh, yes, I wonder what I've dropped. And she said, and you have not changed at all. And I looked and I was thinking, how can that honestly be true? I have trained, I have run. I've run minimums of 30, 35 kilometer training runs every Saturday. I've run a 42 kilometer marathon. I have just worked my little butt off to do this. Hadn't changed at all. And I have to say, I was a bit disappointed. And the thing for me is I had misunderstood a challenge and a goal. And really what my goal had been was to drop a dress size. But I picked a challenge. So I got hooked and stuck on doing this marathon. Whereas actually, if I'd really wanted to drop a dress size, there are different things that I could have done. And although I was very proud to have done the marathon, I was a bit disappointed. So picking the right thing, picking a goal and understanding why you're doing it is really important. So what the measure that you're going to pick depends on what you wrote down. I know I didn't really give you time to do that, but what you wrote down as your why you want to grow your Norwex business. Now, if, for example, your why is a financially driven one, then a measure of success for you might be dollar sales, because that could correlate nicely with your financial outcomes. If you want to spread the word, if you want to have a whole lot many more households using Norwex products and having healthy households, and the environment is very important to you, then number of new customers might be a better measure for you. Or if you're very keen on growing your business and helping other people grow a business, then number of new recruits could be really important to you. Or if you want to get to the Maldives, whatever the targets are for that might be the thing that's really important to you. Or, as I said, if you just love parties, then maybe the number of parties is important to you. But the point about that one is to be careful. I think number of parties is important, but it might not be your goal, because theoretically you could actually have 50 parties, or 40 parties over 100 days, or 20 parties over 100 days, but not sell anything. So if really you had if your why was a financial why, it would be possible to do what you set out to do, but not achieve anything. I know it would be unlikely, but it is possible. And that's what leads to disappointment. So I want you just to think for a minute about what you are going to measure for your goal. And I'm really happy to answer any questions on this.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Julia. When you're setting a number of parties, what is the measure of success? What is the measure of achievement? Also, thanks, Julie Baker, for sharing the Facebook link on the chat group there as well. And Tisha Cosgrove, I'm glad you've come back on with your audio. So thanks for letting us know.
Okay, so we might move on to the next slide. So So I'm going to assume that you know what your measure is now. And I know I've run through this a little bit quickly, but you can go through it again this evening and tomorrow. I'm around to answer questions. There's some notes also on my website. There's some notes in the email. So there's more stuff to help remind you about this. So the next thing is working out how big to make our goal. And this is really important, because if we make our goal too easy and if it's really achievable, we won't get that lovely sense of achievement from it. And when you don't get a sense of achievement, you don't get this lovely sort of bursts of dopamine in the brain. And so you don't feel motivated. So something that's too easy, it's sort of no fun to do. On the other hand, you don't want to pick a goal that is too hard, because if you pick something that's too hard, you're going to get very demotivated very quickly, because you'll just think, oh, look, I just can't do it anyway. What's the point in even starting or carrying on? So we want to pick a goal that's not too hard and not too easy. And so I call that range the sort of the 100-day goal sweet spot. And I'm going to help you find your 100-day goal sweet spot. So we'll go on to the next slide. So the first thing I'd like you to do is just have a guess as to what your goal size is going to be. Now, this is just a guess. I had actually a great question yesterday, because one of the ladies, she wanted to increase her number of customers, but she didn't know what her current number of customers is. So it's possible that you do need to do a bit of homework around this to work out, what a guess goal might be, where you might want to get to. And that's fine. But a guess goal is just a sort of you just have a feeling of what you want the number to be. That is literally what a guess goal is. So what you do is on the handout, you just write your guess goal in the box. So you should have a page which says pick your goal, and it's a table. It's got measure, guess, magnitude, sweet spot, good, great, awesome. So where it says guess, just write out your guess goal. Now you can go back and improve this and make it more appropriate to you later, but I'm going to walk you through the process. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take what I call the magnitude quiz. Now, the detailed quiz is written on the handout, but I'm actually going to run through it now and get you to think about it, because there's some things that I want to talk about each of the topics and why it's important. So while I'm doing this, you can give yourself a score out of 10 for each of the questions that I'm going to ask. And you can write that score on the page which has got number 7, what are you willing to give up to reach your 100-day goal? Number 8, how can we see you doing that? So that's written in pink. At the bottom of that is a little table, and you can write the score by each one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when we get started. So what I want you to think about is, first of all, is what is your track record for achieving stuff for other people, for someone else? So what I mean here is think about, so if you are employed somewhere, then how likely are you to do something, for your boss when you're asked to do it? Or around children, let's say it's book week coming up and your child really wants to go as a pirate. How likely are you to make sure they go as a pirate? Okay, so it's really interesting to think of yourself a score out of 10 for how good we are at achieving stuff for other people. So have a quick think about that and write that in the box.
We've got a question here. You keep talking about a handout. Where is this? Christine, it was on the Vic page. I put a link to the handout on the Vic page. It's also on the NCO. If anyone can put a link into the handout on the chat group, that would be very great. I can't do it because I've got the PowerPoint up. But yeah, so there is a handout. It was, there we go. Thanks, Joe Clark. Appreciate that, honey. So you can download it, print it off. It makes it really easy to ensure that you're following along, Christy.
Great. Okay, so you give yourself a score out of 10, and then write that next to, in that little box next to 1, my achieving stuff for others, what your score is for that. Then the next one I want you to think about is, what is your track record of achieving stuff for you? So think about a project or something you've wanted to sort of do for yourself, or something where the energy for it all needs to come from you, and what is your track record of doing it? So this is very interesting, because what we find is that an awful lot of us are what we call obligers, and obligers are really good at doing things for other people and keeping commitments for other people, but not very good at keeping commitments for yourself. So I do a lot of work with small businesses and people who've come out of employment and start up little businesses, but not with the fantastic structure that you have at Norwex with team leaders and all the, you know, all the rest of the things to help you, but people who start up little businesses like maybe a cake baking business, and it's really just them. And what they find is it's really hard for them to achieve stuff for themselves and to commit to doing all the things for their business. But when they were employed, they were very, very good at doing something for somebody else, for a boss or a team member. So it's interesting to think about that one, because with your 100-day goal, you're doing this really for you. You're the driver of it. And so understanding your track record of achieving stuff for you is important. So you give yourself a score out of 10 for that one. And then give yourself a score out of 10 for your track record with this theme. And so this is, if you think back, say maybe over the last year with your Norwex business, and this is just a very personal thing where you think, okay, how do I feel that I have gone against my own expectations? So you might have felt for 2018, oh, do you know what? I had the most brilliant year. I'm really proud of what I've done. It doesn't matter whether anyone else is proud of what you've done. If you feel that you actually have done really well, then you'd give yourself a score out of 10. If you're looking backwards, maybe say 2018, and think, you know what, I could have achieved a lot more. I just sort of didn't really nail it. I wasn't really engaged enough. I didn't do as much as I know I could have done. Then give yourself a lower score. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks and what everyone else's scores are. This is just personal, measuring yourself against yourself. So you give yourself a score out of 10 for that one. And then the next one is, how much time do you have available? What's your available time? I want you to give yourself a score out of 10 for this. And so you can be honest here and think, okay, well, if I'm growing my Norwex business, maybe I've got heaps of time to do that, in which case I give myself, a 10. Or maybe actually I've got an awful lot of things on and I just have to be cognizant of that. And so you give yourself a lower score out of 10 for that one. The next one is your headspace. So I want you to think about how much headspace you have for your goal. So it's very possible to have plenty of time to do it, but actually there's so much stuff going on. You might have, you might have a lot of sort of mental load in your head about running the family home, or something's happening to the kids, or parents need looking after, or some difficult project in a day job, or all sorts of things can be going on. And that can create a big mental load and fill up your headspace. So give yourself a score out of 10 for how much headspace you have. So if you've got not much else going on, your head's feeling quite free, give yourself a 10. And if it's all feeling a little bit cluttered, then you'd sort of give yourself a low score. Then the next one is, how important is achieving your 100-day goal to you? So if this is really important to you, then you give yourself a 10. And if you're thinking, do you know what, I'm sort of just here for the ride, then you give yourself a low score. So again, this is just something personal to you. You don't have to tell anybody. No one's going to judge you, whatever your answer is. It's just gives you an indication of where you sit. And then the last two questions, the first one is, what are you willing to give up to reach your 100-day goal? Now, I'm not suggesting you have to give anything up to reach your 100-day goal, but if I asked you the question, would you be prepared to give up a half an hour in the evening, say, of watching Netflix, would you do that? Then you might say, yeah, no, I'd do that. Or you might say, no chance, I'm not giving up anything to do my goal. And it doesn't matter what your answer is, but just give yourself a score out of 10 for how likely you are to give something up. And then the last one of these questions is, how committed are you to working every day on your goal? Now, I haven't talked about this yet, but what I am going to encourage you to do is to do what's called a micro action every single day. And a micro action only takes 15 minutes. So what I'm saying here then is, how committed are you to spending 15 minutes or more on your goal every day? And I will be sharing some stuff to explain why it's important, and it will make you feel a little bit more like you want to. But right now, give yourself a score out of 10 for, yes, you know, I'm really committed to doing that, or a low score if you're not. So these questions are all really good questions for working out how for working out all the dimensions that fit into your goal, and how big you should make your goal, and how engaged you are in your goal. They're actually good questions just to ask yourself, because they can actually be very revealing when you say, oh, actually, you know what, maybe I'm not so into it, or actually maybe I really, really am. So add up all your scores, and now you're going to get a score out of 80. And then we're just going to do something with that. So then if you have got the handout, you write what number you got out of 80 underneath magnitude score on the pick your goal page. And then Kath, we might have the next slide, please. So basically, with that magnitude score, your score out of 80, what we're going to do is we're going to make your goal, you know, the guess goal that you put down, we're going to make it bigger or smaller depending on what your score was. And the reason for this is that, and I've done this with, you know, tens of thousands of people now, and it really seems to work, is that some of us have a lot of capacity to do our goal, but we don't set ourselves very high targets. And some of us have not much capacity to do our goal, but set ourselves to higher targets. And so, having done this a lot of times, a lot of people, on average, it works if you do what I'm going to suggest. So if you score between 65 to 80, you're going to increase that guess goal by 25%. And the new number you come up with, you'd write under sweet spot. So Amanda gets to, you were very good, Amanda, you get to stick with the goal you had. So if you got between 55 to 65, you'd increase your guess goal by 10%. If you score between 45 and 55, you're going to stick with your guess goal. If you score between 35 to 45, you're going to decrease it by 10%. If you score between 25 to 35, decrease it by 25%. If you were down at the 10 to 25 mark, you're going to decrease your guess goal by 40%. You're going to make it a lot easier to achieve it. And I don't think you would be on this webinar if you scored 0 to 10. So we won't worry about that one. So this gives us a new goal. So your guess goal has gone up or down according to how you answered those questions. But that is not all. If we have the next slide, please, Kath. So the thing about the subconscious brain, it's a very funny being. Basically, it really enjoys helping us reach our goals, but it's also very, very busy. And so if you set your brain a goal and you say, look, my goal is to find 100 new customers, then your subconscious brain thinks that's exactly what you want. You want 100 new customers. You don't want 104 new customers or 110 new customers. You want exactly 100 customers. And your brain does nothing to get you extra ones, because, you know, think about your subconscious. It's so busy, you know, operating your lungs and your heart and all those other things. It's a very, very busy organ. So it hasn't got time. It thinks if you don't want it, it's not going to do it for you. And this would be great were it not for the fact that even with the best intentions, life gets in the way sometimes. And so your subconscious brain assumes that everything is going to go according to plan, but things don't always go according to plan. So what happens when you set yourself a goal, the brain thinks everything's going to go according to plan. It sets off on a trajectory for that. But unfortunately, let's say you get the flu and you're off sick for a week and you can't do things. Your brain hasn't allowed any wiggle room for that. And so you'll miss your goal. And this is really interesting. It happens with athletes, businesses, all sorts of things. As we regularly underachieve our goals. So what we're going to do now is a special little technique which will help us get over this problem. So the first thing is that you do is where I've written, you see good goal on there, you write your sweet spot goal again in that good goal box. So your good goal is exactly the same as your sweet spot goal. And I'll explain why in a minute. Then you take your good goal and you make it 10% bigger and you put it in the great goal box. And then you take your good goal and make it 25% bigger and put it in your awesome goal box. So now you've got a good goal, a great goal that's 10% bigger, and an awesome goal that's 25% bigger. Now, for the rest of the 100 days, you are going to aim for that awesome goal. That is the goal you're going to write down every day. That's the goal you're going to really focus on. That's the goal you're really going to try to achieve. And you're going to put this piece of paper with the good goal and the great goal away in a drawer. Then, when it comes to the 11th of May, which is day 100, the 100-day goal, you're going to see where you got to. Now, the likelihood is that you won't have achieved your awesome goal, because we set it as the target, but our brain normally underachieves on that. And you might feel a little bit disappointed because you've had that awesome goal in your head for the whole 100 days. But what you do is you go and find a piece of paper that you tucked away in a drawer and you have a look at it. And I can guarantee that if you do your micro actions every day and follow the things that I suggest, that 50% of you will have reached your great goal and 50% of you will have reached your good goal. And what happens when you look at that piece of paper and you go and you remember that back on the 31st of January, you were really happy with that good goal, you will feel really satisfied. And so it's a way of bridging that gap between setting yourself a high goal but not feeling disappointed if you reach it. Now, I just got a question from Emma about the 25% bigger. Yes, the awesome goal is 25% bigger than the good goal. So it's not 25% bigger than the great goal. So the good goal is the goal. Great goal is 10% bigger than the good goal, and awesome is 25% bigger than the good goal. So this is a really good little trick to do for anybody if you're ever got a goal and anybody else is doing goals, because we do regularly underhit our goals. And so it's good to set them higher than we want. But the real trick is hiding, what we really want to achieve, so we still get our sense of satisfaction. Okay, so that's goals. Just before we setting our goals, just before we move on, has anybody else got any questions on that? No? Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide then, please, Kath. Okay, so now we've looked at why we're doing it for 100 days. We've looked at the goal. And then the next thing is looking at this topic of micro actions. So we'll just go on to the next slide. So micro actions are the tasks that we do to reach our goal, and they're very small. So this is a task that takes 15 minutes or less, and it's a goal that actually moves us up. It's a task that actually moves us upward towards our goal. So the next slide. So the thing about, the reason they're called actions is that actions move us directly towards our goal, whereas tasks that are motion tend to be a long way from our goal or really don't directly lead us there at all. And the reason that I talk about this a lot is because what I found from starting with myself and then with everybody else that I've done this with, is that we can get quite carried away with tasks that don't actually lead us towards our goal. And in fact, one of the biggest reasons, even if we do persist with something that we don't reach our goal, is because our efforts weren't as focused and as good as they should be. And really, we can end up wasting, a lot of our effort by doing things that aren't going to get us towards our goal. So if we have the next slide. So a really good idea after I've explained it, is to get a pencil and leave a pencil on your to-do list, because it will remind you of this. So if you imagine a pencil, that green part is the barrel of the pencil. So imagine the pencils are different types of tasks. The green bit, the barrel of the pencil, these are motion tasks. They support the writing, but they don't make a mark on the paper. So if making a mark on the paper was the goal, that green barrel is pretty useless in making a mark. It's not helpful. If you have a completely unsharpened pencil, which is just a barrel, it doesn't make a decent mark on the paper. You have to try really hard to get anything out of it, but it's supportive. But those tasks are not micro actions, and they don't count for the 100-day goal. So up in the cone part of the pencil, you've got two bits. You've got the grey pencil lead, which I call the pointy bit, and these are pointy actions. So if you were drawing something, then, you know, if you move that grey part on the pencil, it makes a mark, that achieves our goal. Behind that, you've got the sort of the wooden bit of the pencil, which I call the blunt part. Now that part is really important for holding the pointy bit in place, but on its own, without the pointy bit, it doesn't help us get our goal. So when we're thinking about tasks, we're going to think about whether they're pointy, whether they're blunt, or whether they're motion. Now, pointy and blunt ones both are micro actions, so they both count towards our 100-day goal. Motion, we're not having anything to do with that. You have to do motion anyway. Motion happens. Like us sitting here doing this webinar is motion. It's supporting your business and it's useful for your business. And I won't for 1 second say it's not, but it doesn't directly lead you towards your goal. And there's lots of things that fall into that category. So it makes it easier if I give some examples. So we'll move on to the next slide. Oh, actually, I just said this, but this isn't the example, but I had forgotten about this. So the thing about pointy and blunt micro actions is the pointy ones, you know, the ones that actually really get us towards our goal, they tend to be quite difficult. So they're the ones that should directly, you know, sort of get us to get one step further to our goal, but are difficult. Blunt ones, which are one step behind that, tend to be a little bit difficult in a different sort of way, which I'll explain in a minute. And then those ones that are motion, they tend to be the easy things. And that's why we gravitate towards them, because it feels like we're making progress and we're doing good stuff, but it's sort of just the easy stuff, which doesn't really get us where we want to get to. Okay, next slide. So here are some examples of pointy micro actions, or what I think of as pointy micro actions. So if your goal is to get 1,000 new customers, having a conversation about Norwex with somebody who could be a potential new customer is a pointy micro action. If they then buy from you, you will have got further towards your goal. You've had another tick up towards your goal. The same thing, if your goal is about increasing the number of recruits that you have, and you have a conversation with somebody about joining your team, then that's a pointy micro action, because if they join your team, that's great. You're one step further towards your goal. If social media is something that you use a lot of, then posting a call to action, so something that somebody actually then should act on with your Norwex business, then that is a pointy micro action. Or if you want to have a certain number of parties, asking someone to host a party is a micro action. So they are the pointy micro actions. They directly should lead to moving up towards your goal. So the next slide. So blunt micro actions, these are the ones that are a step behind. So what I mean by a step behind is, say you're going to organize a catch up with somebody, and so you're going to organize the catch up, but just organizing it, just sort of phoning up and saying, hey, do you want to have a coffee with me, that's not a pointy micro action, because it's not going to result, that alone is not going to result in you achieving your goal, but it is the support to it. So it's the little blunt part. The same thing with organizing to catch up with a customer who you're thinking about talking about joining your team. So that is a blunt micro action. It's important and it's nearly there, but it's just not quite there. The same thing with, say, preparing a social media post, or making a list of customers to call about a new product, or working out what you're going to say to people, creating a bit of a script or something. All these things are really important, and they're close to achieving, they're close to moving you towards your goal, but they're not quite there. So they are blunt micro actions. So those pointy micro actions and those blunt micro actions, they count when I'm talking about micro actions. The next I'm going to talk about, the motion. Kath, if we could just have that slide. These are not relevant to what we're talking about with the 100-day goal. So, you know, tidying your desk, buying new stationery, getting all ready is all fantastic and fun stuff to do. And I'm terrible at spending time tidying my desk and getting myself organized. So I do really enjoy it. And I always have to remind myself that it's just motion and it's nice, but it's not going to really get me towards my goal. So these things on here we're just going to discount them. They're important and you can do them for your business, but they're not micro actions and they don't count in your thing to do every day.
See, I would see these, Julia, in a Norwex format as, like stamping your catalogues and packing your folders and making sure your fibres are ready. Whereas a blunt action is like the getting organised. It's the intention to create action, and then the pointy would be the actual action. I think this is great. To break it down is what I'm loving, to give us a better understanding, because I agree, I'd love to have a tidy desk, but it's just I've always got blunt and pointy things to do rather than motion. So but they all have a part to play.
Absolutely. And it's about doing the pointy and the blunt ones first and then doing the motion ones. And I think this is great stuff for us to chat about also in the Facebook group, so that we can really make sure with a Norwex hat on that we understand which fits into what, because it does make such a difference when you actually start working on the right things.
Yes. Yeah. Great.
So they're great examples. Okay. Yes. Let's move forward. So what we're going to do is, what you're going to do over the next day, maybe a little bit longer, is create a big list of micro actions. And we're going to do this for a couple of reasons, and then I'm going to show you some ways to do it. But we're going to create a very big list of micro actions because the first reason is that every day I'm going to ask you to do at least one micro action every day. Now, the thing is that it takes a bit of effort to think about what micro actions to do. And if you use up all your sort of decision making and your effort and your willpower in deciding what micro action to do, you might not have any energy left to actually do the task. In fact, it's very good for your brain to separate out the decision to do something with actually doing it. So as you'll see later, I recommend that you work out what you're going to do tonight, because when you separate that out, it's almost like you're delegating it to somebody else. It feels really fun coming up with a whole list of micro actions, because it's almost like that magical future me is going to do them, not today me. But when you're doing it, when you're writing out and thinking about what is today me going to do, you're sort of less likely to want to do it. So you're going to come up with a big list of micro actions so that every day you've got something that you can just pick up and go, yes, I'm going to do that today. And you don't have to waste any time worrying about what it's going to be. And especially if you're very busy, you can just get on with the micro action. So that's one reason why we're going to do it. But the other reason is it actually helps us come up with good ideas. So if you are, and this works for anything, whenever a bit short of ideas, is try to come up with a really, really long list of them. Because what happens is, and I set your task of finding 150 micro actions, is you can probably come up with 10 or 20 very quickly. And then you will get stuck and you won't be able to think of any more. And it's almost like it actually feels like it hurts your brain to think about it. But that's important, because if you push through that, your subconscious brain will actually sort of like gear itself up and start the little engine whirring, and it will come up with some fantastic ideas for you. Your subconscious actually is a very good sort of pattern recognition and an idea machine, but it has to be forced into working. And actually creating a big list forces it into working, and you'll find yourself flooded then with ideas. Now, some of those ideas will be absolutely useless. They'll be bonkers ideas, but that's fine. You write them all down and then cross off the bonkers ones. It's almost like sometimes you've got to get some rubbish has to come out before the good stuff has to come out. But you'll be amazed if you do this, how you really think nothing's going to happen, and then all of a sudden you have the best ideas. And that's why I recommend, when you do your list of 150 micro actions, is that you have a go, you leave it on your kitchen bench top, and then you keep coming back to it and let it whir away in the back of your mind while you're doing other things. And then over a period of, say, 24 to 48 hours, you'll be amazed at how many ideas you come up with. But there is another way of coming up with your micro actions, and I'll show you this tool for if you're a bit stuck. So you might have the next slide, Kath? Oh, the slide after, actually, sorry. Oh, slide after, one more. Okay, so so some people like a really logical way of doing this, and this is for logical people, and other people are very sort of creative and just like the whole list of 150. Doesn't matter which method you use, and you can use a hybrid of them. But this way says, okay, I'm going to look at my goal, and then I'm going to think what paths, sort of 3 to 5 paths are there for me to reach that goal, and then under each path, what projects are there? And then under each project, I'm going to ask myself some questions, and that's going to help me find my micro actions. So I'm going to do that with this example here. So let's say my goal is dollar sales. So then I would have my 3 paths could be, I'm going to have a path that's around parties. I'm going to have a path that's just around contacting existing customers or selling more to existing customers. And I'm going to have a path around social media. So I'm just making these paths up. It's just to help me to explain it. Then with your path, let me say we go down that path for existing customers. I might say, so what sort of projects can I do under that? Well, one project, I might contact everybody about those new lovely kids sponges. So then I think, okay, so that's my project, contact everyone about the kids sponges. Then ask myself some questions. And these are just the sort of questions that you would ask yourself anyway. But I think sometimes we skip the questions and just try to go straight to the solution. And the questions is a really useful method. So then you go through your questions and literally you'd say to yourself, well, what would you say? You'd say, well, who will I contact? Who am I going to tell about the sponges? How should I contact them? Maybe should I email them or should I phone them? And what should I say? And then they're the questions. But each of those questions sort of informs a micro action. So if I'm thinking, well, who will I contact? Well, a micro action would be to mark up a contact list. And then how shall I contact them? Then I've got a decision there. So shall I email them or shall I phone them? And I encourage you to put these little decisions down as micro actions, because it's amazing how often we don't get on with something because there's a little decision to make and the decision stops us. And it's interesting, you know, if you've got a decision to make, you can make that decision in 15 minutes or 3 hours, and it's not going to be a better decision after 3 hours. So I say, give yourself 15 minutes and say, right, in that 15 minutes, I'm going to have made my decision. That's a micro action. And then what shall I say? Maybe write some notes about what you're going to say in a phone call or write out an email. That's another micro action. And then literally you make the phone call or you send the email. So you might see on the slide that I've written a little B or a P in those blue boxes against those micro actions. And the B stands for blunt and the P stands for pointy. So marking up a contact list is like a blunt micro action. It's a step behind actually contacting them. Deciding whether you're going to email or phone them is a blunt one. It's a step behind. Drafting your notes is a blunt one. It's a step behind. And then actually making that contact is the pointy micro action. But they're all micro actions and they all count. So they're the sorts of things that we're looking for in our list of 150 micro actions. So we might just go on to the next slide. Or actually the next slide after that. So I'm not going to spend sort of 5 minutes now in quiet work on micro actions with you, because I can't sort of come around and ask you all. So what I suggest is we carry on, but I'm really happy to answer any questions. Well, if you've got questions now about micro actions, I'm very happy to answer them now. And I'm also happy to answer them in the Facebook group, or I'm happy if you email me. I'm always happy to answer questions about micro actions. So are there any questions now?
Oh, let's see if it come through. Doesn't look like it. Only Felicity.
Doesn't look like it?
If anyone knows Felicity Joseph, let her know that we are recording this, so she'll get the recording later. But otherwise, good. Okay, so we'll carry on. But what I would really urge you to do is to make this list of 150 micro actions. It's one of those little things, you know how sometimes, you know, preparation is key. And if you do this, it will change how you feel about the 100-day goal. So do start the list. If you're thinking, oh, I haven't really got time, can't really be bothered, please have a go at it. Okay, next slide. So now we're going to have a look at this concept of every day.
which sometimes can feel a little bit like, oh gosh, do I really have to do something every day? And I am going to explain why now. So we'll go on to the next slide. So I'm going to ask you to do between 1 and 3 micro actions a day. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, you know what, I already do, 3 micro actions a day, then you want to add an extra 1 to 3 micro actions a day. Because remember, this is about growing your business. So there's some really important reasons why we want to do them every day. And 3 of those reasons center around how our brains work. And I've touched on 2 of these already, but I think it's worth mentioning them again because they just changed how easy doing our goal feels. So the first one is that reticular activating system. So remember, that was the barrier that's around your subconscious brain that rejects 99% of information. Now, when you work on your goal every day, when you do micro actions every single day, this keeps the reticular activating system open, and it keeps it looking for opportunities for you to reach your goal. Now, if you sort of thinking, oh, I don't really know whether this reticular activating system really works. If, let's say today, you buy or get given, how nice would this be, a brand new red Golf car. When you go out of the house and jump in your car, you'll be driving down the street and you will see that everybody else seems to have a red Golf as well. And you're thinking, well, how did that happen? Nobody had a red Golf yesterday, and now everybody's got a red Golf. And what's happened is that your reticular activating system thinks that red Golfs is important to you. And so it lets you see all the cars that are red Golfs. And the reason why you continue to see them every day and continue to think, oh, wow, look, they're still everywhere, is because every day that you get into your car, you're priming your reticular activating system again and reminding it that red Golfs are important. So it's the same, when you find out you're pregnant and all of a sudden you look around and everybody seems to be pregnant. You're thinking, oh, wow, how can that be? Nobody was pregnant yesterday, now everybody's pregnant. So our reticular activating system is a real thing. 99% of the opportunities for you to grow your business, you will miss if you don't prime your brain. And working on your goal every day, doing your micro actions every day, keeps your brain open every day, keeps this system open, and you will spot new opportunities. I mean, I often get emails from people around about day 10 of a 100-day goal, telling me an amazing coincidence that they feel has happened. And I had one just the other day. There's a lady in the UK makes jams and conserves, and she wants to grow her business a lot, but she didn't feel she could do it on her own. She felt she sort of needed to do it with somebody else or in a different way. And although she set her goal to grow it, and she wrote to me around about day 10 saying, you will not believe what's happened. I've met somebody, similar business to me, wants to go into partnership. I think we're going to do this. This is how I'm going to grow my business. Isn't this an amazing coincidence? And it's not a coincidence. It's just we're open to seeing it. So this is a really very special sort of thing. So the second one of the little brain systems that every day is important is the dopamine reward system. Now remember, this is where when you work on your goal, when you do a micro action, doing that will make you feel good because you'll think, oh, that's so fantastic. I've worked towards my goal, and you'll get a burst of dopamine, which will make you feel motivated to do more. And you might have experienced this when, sometimes you think, oh, I really don't feel like doing this. But then you do it and then you think, oh, I could do more. I can do more, So the lovely thing about doing micro actions every day is that little dopamine surge actually carries over to the next day. So if you work on your goal today, you will feel like working on it tomorrow. It doesn't go any further than tomorrow. It's a bit of a stretch to get it to tomorrow, to be honest. So if you work on your goal today, you miss tomorrow, you won't have any dopamine left over to motivate you the day after. So it's really important to carry on every single day. And the third system in the brain that it's important for is the habit system, what I call habit central in the brain. So when you do something, a lot of times you create new neural pathways. It does take quite a long time to create them, but then things become automatic. You stop thinking that you have to find the time to do something. It's almost like your brain creates the time for it. And when you show up every day and work on micro actions for your goal every single day, those neural pathways are being built. and you will find that you just expect yourself to work on your micro actions. You feel less like you have to do it. It feels like you're just going to do it. It's a little bit like, when you're little, when you're old, brushing teeth, I can't remember what age people are when they get teeth now, but when you're very little and you start brushing your teeth, it's a whole big process and to remember to do it and everything. But nobody has to remember when they're a mum that they have to brush their own teeth, because it's just inbuilt. You wouldn't go to bed without doing it. You wouldn't get up in the morning without doing it. And that's creating these neural pathways. And so there are three sort of systems in the brain that activate when you do work on your goal every day. And when you activate those systems, you will find your goal much easier. So instead of it feeling like walking through mud, you will actually feel that it is easy, and it gets easier and easier. And then there's a fourth sort of magical reason for doing it every day. And it's a little bit like, sort of compound interest in the bank. If you put $1 in the bank today, tomorrow it's fractionally bigger, and with some interest, and the day after that it's fractionally bigger again. So can you still hear me?
Yep, we got you, hon.
Yeah, so something just funny happened on my earphones. So basically, the things that we put in place grow, and when you add micro actions to micro actions to micro actions every day, they sort of amplify. And you just have to trust me with this one. And what it feels like is that if I were to give you an orange every time that you did a micro action, and let's say you did 100 micro actions and you put all those oranges in the sack, at the end of 100 days, you would expect to have 100 oranges. But when you look in your sack on 11th of May, you've actually got 1,000 oranges. It sort of amplifies and some magic happens. And I can't explain it better than that, but it always works. So every day is really, really important. So I'm going to show you, if we go on to the next slide, so how we're actually going to make it work and how to fit it in every day. Because you know what, it can be a bit tricky. I absolutely understand and acknowledge that you're busy. You're thinking, oh, how am I going to find the time to do something every day? And then you're thinking, how am I going to have the headspace to do it? Because I might be a bit cluttered. And then if I've got the time and the headspace, I might not have the energy. And then if I've got the time, the headspace and energy, you know what, I might actually not have the courage to go and do it. So I've got some tips here to help you with all these things. So if we just go on to the next slide. So first of all, just with time, I just want to say that this is called a grid of 96. So there are 96 15 minutes in your day, and I'm asking you to devote one of those 96 to doing your 100-day goal. So it's a roughly 1% of your day. So it's not a huge amount. If you are finding yourself very busy and you can't find time, a good little exercise to do is to draw out a grid of 96 like this, and then color code it for all the different things you're doing in those 15 minutes. So maybe you have a whole lot of yellow for sleeping, and maybe some green ones for eating, and then going for shops, buy groceries might be orange, looking after the kids might be a different color. But you color code all the 15 minutes and you get to see a very interesting visual representation of where all your time is going. And when you do that, you think, oh, you know what, I can find a sneaky 15 minutes to do my micro action. So the next slide, please, Kath. So here are some I suppose, tools that I use, which actually help across all the barriers to doing things every day. So they help me manage my time, they help me manage my energy, my headspace, and my courage. So the first one I've already mentioned is do the master micro action list. Come up with your list of at least 150 micro actions. The second one is plan what you're going to do tomorrow, tonight. It's just a really good way of getting things done. The third one is write your goal down daily. So hand write your goal. When you write something by hand, there's a special neural connection between our writing and our brain, and it reminds your brain that it's really important. And when your subconscious thinks it's important, it helps you find the time. When you think about your goal, your subconscious thinks you've achieved your goal. It's a bit of brain trickery, and you get a nice burst of dopamine, which makes you feel energized. And that contributes to helping you have a clear head and having the courage. So another thing I recommend is thinking in sprints. So, sometimes when I do this, people think, oh, 100 days doesn't sound very long. But then when we start the 100 days, they think, oh, wow, actually 100 days is a long time. So I like to think in terms of 10-day sprints, and every 10 days, I give myself a little reward for hanging in there. The next one is a really good one to do, called Don't Break the Chain. So for this, you just need to sort of get, draw out a box. I've written this in a link to the email, so you can do it yourself. But like, create 100 boxes, number them 1 to 100, and then every day you do a micro action, put a cross in that day. And what happens is you end up with a lovely chain of crosses that you won't want to break. And this is actually the technique that Jerry Seinfeld used to make himself write every day. He felt that he had to be a really good comedian, he had to write every single day to sort of, I don't know, get the juices flowing. And to make himself do that, he would put a cross on a calendar, and he never wants to break the chain. So two things that are good are, another two things that are good are to journal your progress, to say what you've done, and then to say your success. Now, here's some interesting brain stuff. When you write out, and in fact, I use a 100-day goal journal for this. So I have a page. At the top of that page, every day, I write out my goal. The night before, I write out what micro actions I'm going to do the next day. Now, one of the things about doing that, not only does it prepare you, doesn't it tell you what you're going to do, also our brains like to be consistent. So if I write out that I am going to do something, my brain, subconscious brain, thinks that I really want to do it and helps me find a time, and that it sort of motivates me to do it. There's a great example of a green energy company that anonymously phoned homeowners and asked them just one very simple question. They just said, is the environment important to you? And, you know, if somebody just asks you that one question, you just say yes, because nobody would say no, would they? So all these people said yes. A few days later, the green energy company went around trying to sell their different energy to those same homeowners. And they had a hugely increased, I think it was a trebled increase in take-up of people who had already said yes, that the environment's important to them, because your brain likes to behave consistently with what it's already said. So if you write out, I am going to do this, then your brain will want you to do it because it likes to behave consistently. So on this particular page, you've got your goal, you write down what you're going to do, then you write down what you did. And the important thing about writing down what you did is that as you start writing it down, it does two things. It reminds the reticular activating system that you're still doing this. The more times you prime it, the better. And then you also get a little hit of dopamine, because it triggers the fact that you've written down an achievement, triggers the dopamine, makes you feel motivated, makes you want to carry on. And then the final one that I do every day is just I write down little successes, and they don't have to be, oh, I've, achieved this much of my goal. Literally, it can be, you know what, I really didn't feel great today and I wasn't going to do my micro action, but I did it. And just writing that down does two things, sends a little spurt of dopamine around your brain, but actually, it actually makes you feel beautifully successful and having had a good day. And it's a lovely thing to do just before you go to sleep, because it makes you feel very restful. Okay, next slide.
I think that's also, Julia, where the Facebook group will come in.
Yes,
sharing those sorts of situations as well. So I look forward to that.
Absolutely, totally, yeah. So the next slide, yes. So a goal tracker. So this over here on the right hand side of this slide is a really simple goal tracker. It's literally 100 little bunting flags. And I use this. So every time I have reached 1% of my goal, I colour in a little bunting flag. Now, it's the simplest little tool, but when you use it and you colour it in, you get that burst of dopamine again. You feel really energized and motivated towards your goal, and it makes you want to colour in another bit of bunting. Now, these might all seem like really small little tricks, but every single burst of dopamine makes you feel more motivated and more energized. And the more motivated you feel, the more likely it is you're going to carry on. And this stuff really works. So a few more things. If you are finding that your head feels very crowded, you can try an exercise called morning pages, where you literally just write out a stream of consciousness, about sort of 3 pages of A4, and clear everything out of your head, and then throw away the bits of paper. You don't need to reread them, but it's very good at just taking everything out of your head and just clearing it up. So someone's asked a question, what is TEH, etc. So they are, T is for time, so this one works for your time, E for energy, H for headspace, and C for courage. Sorry, it's not a silly question at all. I should have mentioned that before. So what I said here is what those tools, how they help with those 4 barriers to doing our micro actions every day. So great question, thank you. Another easy one is say your goal out loud. Again, it works for all those brain systems. Write down your why. So remember the why wheel I talked about before? If you're ever feeling a bit like, oh, I can't be bothered to do this, write down why growing your Norwex business is important, and that will really get you going. Socialize your success, talk about it. This is a great thing for the Facebook group. Say what you've been doing and say your successes, and actually repeating them gives you another burst of motivation. It's amazing how that works. Create a 100-day goal vision board. So I do one of these inside one of my kitchen cupboards so that I open it regularly and get to see it. And on a 100-day goal vision board, you might have your goal tracker, maybe a little picture of what your goal might look like when it's finished. You might have your why there. You might have a motivating quote, all that sort of thing. It's very lovely to have a sort of a point where you put all that stuff. And then the final one on this page, if you really want to make sure that you always do your micro action or micro actions, then do them as early in the day as possible before everything else comes and gets in the way. And I think, oh, that's very important. So I've got a frog in my throat. Okay, go to the next slide. Okay, I'll just go through these quickly. So here I'll just quickly go through the 4 some particular exercises for each of those 4 things that get in the way. So on the time one, remember micro actions are really small, they're tiny, they're less than 15 minutes. So it's quite easy, if you know what you're going to do, to fit it into what I call a little time bubble. Plan, and then if you're finding that you're sort of feel like you're just too busy, try keeping a timesheet and just writing down where you're spending all your time, or that grid of 96 that I showed you, and color in where your time's going, because it really helps you work out where you're spending your time. And then thinking about it, so thinking, well, is this actually on the important stuff? You know, if growing my Norwex business is really important to me, I'm bound to have things on my timesheet that aren't important to me, and I'm going to have to, you know, say no to some of those things. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. So if you're feeling that you haven't got the energy, a few things here, just do what I call 3 seconds of action. Literally just say, okay, all I'm going to do is just get out my pen and a piece of paper and write a heading. And once you've done that, you just think, oh, I may as well carry on now that I've done that bit. Sometimes we just need to do a tiniest little bit to get going. Working with the sort of person that you are, the afternoon, this time of the day, is not good for doing hard things. Oh, it's great for actual courses and stuff. It's not good for hard things. We all have an afternoon slump. So pick your moments. And I've done a lot of work and research around motivation, and there are so many different things you can do to motivate yourself. On my website, I have a motivation kit. There must be like 200 or 300 things you can do to motivate yourself. Things as simple as playing a motivating song. In fact, they did a huge study, and they worked out, well, the world's most motivating song is Eye of the Tiger. And there's something to do with the beat and how it resonates with the human body. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely. Loving Eye of the Tiger.
Oh yeah, no, something's happened with my earphone. So it's really good idea to create yourself a bit of a daily motivation routine. So maybe, you know, a bit of Eye of the Tiger, followed by a few star jumps, followed by turmeric. That's very that creates dopamine. There's all sorts of things you can do, but you can create a daily motivation.
Did you say turmeric, Julia?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Isn't that weird?
It is. I know it's great for inflammation and that sort of thing, but I didn't know it was good for motivation.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's just amazing the things. I'm just been a passion project of mine last year, finding things that are motivators and synthesize, help us synthesize dopamine. Because when you get that bit working and you feel energized, you feel like you can do anything. So it's important.
Well,
Okay,
Rachel Edwards is telling us that a turmeric chai is delicious. So there we go, everyone.
oh, there we go. Oh, and I'm glad you thought of Eye of the Tiger, because I do normally ask that question, but I didn't because, you know, it take a while for everyone to put their things in.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so the next slide, please. So just on headspace, the one I really want to talk about here is tuning in time. So when you work, say you work outside the home, when you go on your commute from home to your job, that commute serves as tuning in time. It helps you move away from being, you know, family, and gets your head into the right space for work. And we actually need tuning in time. It's very difficult for us to flip into our different personas, just go from one to another to another. So if you're finding it hard to move from mum brain into Norwex brain, or another job you have into Norwex brain, allow yourself some tuning in time. And tuning in time can be as simple as a cup of coffee, or you could do some of those sort of motivating things. You could listen to some music, you could go for a walk, all that sort of stuff. But just allow yourself a little period of time to move out of one of your headspaces into another one. It's really important, that. And planning and preparation is great for headspace. Okay, next slide. So the final thing about courage and confidence, and a few different things here, but one of them is that I recommend to everybody is keep what I call a smile file. So every time anyone says anything nice about what you've done, what you've achieved, or who you are, put it into a smile file. So if they send you an email, you can put it straight into a smile file. Otherwise, write it out in little notes. I use something called Zoho Notebook for this. And the idea is you write down all these fantastic things. And then when you're having a crisis of confidence, actually, can you stop hearing me now? I think my headphones are dying. So I keep getting this funny noise.
Still got you, love. Still got you.
Okay. Well, shout if I go. Type in the message box if it doesn't, because this keeps making this funny noise. Sure. Okay, so if you're ever feeling a crisis of confidence, then do go and look through your smile file, because it'll make you feel brilliant. Then the other thing is that I love this is that, you know, those things you're doing where you're just feeling like, oh, this could go really well or it could go really badly. It's just, think of it, it's a success or it's a story, and that we all love those good stories. So you can think about that, and you know, it makes for a good laugh even if things don't go well. So then another thing about reading and watching sort of successful stories or people who've overcome great things is really, it builds your own courage, because you tend to think, oh wow, if they can do that, then I can do this. And on my website I've put a few things on there, and I'll add some more in some of the daily emails, the things that you can read or watch just to make you feel good. Okay, so next slide, please. All right, so just a couple of tips. If you miss a day, never miss the next day. Don't leave 2 days, because it's really hard to get back into it, and all those brain systems don't work if you miss 2 days. If you need a day off, you can do a motion task, tidy your desk, but you could probably only do 2 of those in 100 days. Use them very sparingly. And try to keep your ratio of pointy to blunt micro actions high. So when I write out my micro actions for the day, I write out whether they're pointy or blunt, because you don't want to just have blunt ones. You don't want to just do all the organizing without actually having the conversations. And then the final thing is I want you to know that the 100-day goal works. I've got a couple of stories on the next slide, which I'll just go through. So here are some things that people have said about it. So only going to smash our goals, not just doubled, but trebled our business in 100 days.
And then this one, this is amazing. I exceeded my 100-day goal, and I'm still really focused on smashing it even more. And then the next one. So this is from someone who's done lots of 100-day goals. Thanks once again, Julia. I've achieved more in a few years that I have been doing the 100-day goal than I ever thought possible. And then this here, my 100-day goal, my original 100-day goal was to increase my Christmas sales. What I've managed to achieve is far beyond what I could have dreamed about. I quit my day job, opened a bricks and mortar shop, now hurtling towards Christmas with more sales than I've ever achieved, and a sense of freedom by being my own boss. And next slide. And then I particularly like this one from Kimberly, because she has used it sort of in a slightly different way. So the 100-day goal is what has kept me in business unexpected life events happen. We have no control over these things. They're going to happen, and they're going to cause us to focus our energies elsewhere. We cannot be everywhere and do everything at once. However, the 100-day goal has kept me focused and allowed me to move the business to a more suitable place and give me the confidence to grow it. And what she has done with the 100-day goal is she's used it as a stability in a very chaotic time in her life. And she actually said it just worked so well. She just rocked up and did her micro actions every day, and it actually gave us a sense of control. So it's a slightly different view on it, but it's a good one. And then this last one I just include because I love it. And it's like I used the 100-day goal to give up my job as a teacher to become a full-time artist. It has transformed my life. So it's not just a tool for business. It is a tool for getting on and doing the things that we really, really want to do. So next slide. So just, well, it doesn't end here, as I've said. So tomorrow I'll start the daily email. So go to that email address. I would go as soon as possible, like now, to 100daygoal.com.au/Norwex. Sign up for the emails, because in the emails, I also send some other information out as well. So I've put a cheat sheet together for how the 100-day goal works, in case you can't remember, and a thing about how to keep a 100-day goal journal and why it works, and another thing about micro actions. I just sort of reinforce how they work. And then don't forget the Facebook group. And then I think it's the last slide now. Mm-hmm. Oh. And then here, create. So things to do. It's not quite the last slide. Can you hear me all right, actually? Because
we've got you, love.
Yeah, good. Sorry, I keep asking that, but something really weird has happened to my earphone.
Yeah.
So create your master micro actionist. I know I've said it a few times, but it really makes a difference. We're going to start tomorrow. The links to everything are there. I'm really happy to answer any questions. But actually, just the next slide, Kath. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning, I said we were just doing that dream exercise for the three ways that it changes how our brains are working. But I also did it because, you know what, if we don't have our dreams out there and we don't do little goals, even if they don't directly seem to lead to them, we will never reach our dreams. But dreams are reached by 100-day goals, one at a time, one at a time, one at a time, which really boils down to just doing something small every day towards where we want to go. So this is a really good way of helping you lead a different life.
Mm-hmm. Love it, Julia. Love it. So we've got a couple of questions here, hun. First up, Julie Baker, thanks for the warning on Spotify that there's a playlist called Morning Motivation. So that's great. Sandy's asking a really good question, Julia, and one that we haven't covered today. Is it possible to work on 2 different projects?
Yes. So I think, well, no, not yes. Yes to the question. No is the answer, actually. But I've been asked this question a lot, and I should have mentioned it. It's a great question. So my rule of thumb is that it's the old saying, if you try to chase 2 rabbits, you catch neither. I strongly recommend you do it on one thing at a time, with the proviso that if it's 2 completely different things, so let's say you want to have a 100-day goal around your Norwex business, and you also want to do one around your personal health, then they are so different that your brain will be able to cope with that. But if they're quite close together, then a lot of people have tried it, and they actually find they sort of give up quite quickly. They find it really hard to do it well. So what I would recommend is you do one 100-day goal, really nail it, really do it properly, and then it's a bit easier to do 2 of them.
Yeah. So when you say a relatable one, to give you an example, Sandy, it might be that you want to increase your party average to $1,000 parties, and you want to achieve the Maldives. So that one kind of goes hand in hand, because the Maldives ends at the end of June. By increasing your average party to 1,000 in sales, then you would achieve the Maldives quicker. Okay. But if you were to say, I want to increase my party average to 1,000 in sales, and I want to lose 10 kilos, they're completely unrelated. Does that help, Julia, to give a clearer example?
Yes, that's great.
Yeah, great. Kylie from WA is asking, so my hubby and I have an agreement that Sunday is a no work day. It's a family day. Just looking for an idea or the best way to make the 100-day goal fit with this still.
Okay, so that's a really good question, and it's one that I get asked a lot. So my first instinct is always to say, look, it's 15 minutes. Can you spend 15 minutes reading or thinking or doing something? Because it's actually not very much. Because what I have found with, you know, all those people who've gone through it is the people that literally do it every single day get the best results, because they just get into the habit and it just flows nicely. If you feel, no, I'm not going to spend 15 minutes even thinking about it, then that's fine. Skip a day. Just make sure that you get back into it a day after. It's, you know, it's not going to stop the 100-day goal working if you always take a day off. But what you find is it's harder to do it.
Yeah. Because
you're having that break and you're slowing down all the brain systems which make it easier to do it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Julie is back again to us, and she's saying, I must admit, I've signed up for everything and ordered your bundle. I'm so excited to get started. Now, Julia, is there some sort of deal happening for No Ex Consultants?
There absolutely is. It's a fantastic deal. I feel like I'm on one of those TV shows. So what I have is there's three things, which are 3 tools and extra things that I've put together to help people reach their 100-day goal. There's a 100-day goal journal, and so what I've been talking about is writing these different things every single day. I created a journal originally for myself because I was fed up of making ones for myself. But I thought, I just want one that's pre-printed. And so that's where that came from. And I find it very helpful. And all these are on my website. And I sell that for $25 with free postage. And I normally sell it for $48. So that's a huge discount.
Yeah.
Then I have and I've got a special, actually, if you happen to be on here from New Zealand, Christchurch have asked me to send over a whole bundle, and it was very expensive doing the postage, so I think I'm going to send a whole box of them over. So if anybody else in New Zealand wants to do something similar, get in touch with me, because I can't send them one by one, but I can send a box. I also have these things called the Boost, which is a little daily video series, and it's like a 1 or 2 minute video on a different topic each day. And that one, I think I put it in at $19, but I can't quite remember actually, because I've got a little bundle of all the things together. And again, I've hugely reduced that one. And that comes as a link in a daily email, but then you get a video, and it's, you know, like some of the concepts I've talked about today, there are lots more concepts that all help. And it's lots more of those little examples. And then the third one is a motivation kit. And so this is where I've sort of collated and put together all these different sorts of ways of increasing your motivation. And they're done by the sort of 1 minute motivators, really quick things you can do. And then there's bigger ones, which are about bigger motivators. And then there's motivators for particular things. And then there's how to create a motivation routine and other bits. So that actually it's like a kit of motivation. Okay. And I put that in there together. And actually you can get all 3 of them. So you can get the whole lot for $49, which is way cheaper than I normally sell it for. Right. But I put it together. Look, all the things I put together because people ask me to do it. It's not, and that's why there's only 3 of them and not 300. Because it's just, I'm all about finding things that are useful and that can help you. My ambition is for you to do the 100-day goal, for you to do it every day, for you to achieve your goals and feel fantastic. And that's when I feel fantastic. So as much as I can do to help you, and that's the tools help, the emails help, the Facebook help, everything helps. That's what I want you to achieve.
Great. So. Excellent. Our Trina in New Zealand has offered to distribute the book herself, so the box that you want to send to New Zealand. So I will get you and Trina in touch with each other, and we can from there, Julia, so we can make that happen. One more question. Do you think one of the reasons we may not succeed is that we try to do too many projects at once? from Sandy.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, we do. So I think what happens is we can get really enthusiastic over a whole lot of different things, and often we never get to the point where we start seeing, because we're trying to do so much, we don't get to the point where we start seeing success, and then we just sort of, we're putting so much effort in, we're not seeing rewards, and then we just sort of fall off the cliff with it. And it's better to do less and get the success and then start adding more things in than it is to sort of try to do. So I, you know, at the beginning of every year, I run a public 100-day goals, and people always turn up and they're going to grow their business, declutter their house, and lose weight, all three in the first 100 days. And I say to people, look, if you haven't done it over the last 5 years, what makes you think you're suddenly going to be able to do all those things in 100 days? It's much better to pick one thing at a time.
Excellent advice. Great. Okay, moving along, just a reminder to join the email group, as you've seen the link there from Julie. She's popped that out up for us. And the other one is, sorry, go back, the email, sorry, that was the daily emails for the 100-day goal. The link was there, and I will email it out to all registered participants on this call, and to join the Facebook group as well, to ensure that you're getting really a daily dose of the 100-day goal from every possible opportunity, through your email and through Facebook. And I think that is really going to be the key to our success, is that complete top of mind. That's that, I don't mean to sound disrespectful, Julia, but it's that mosquito that just keeps buzzing around your ear. Do you know that you're like, oh, for goodness sake, I need to do this. So
Absolutely.
I need to take action. So yes.
Absolutely. I love that analogy.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much, Julia. We really appreciate you investing the time in us, and spending the time and really sharing this amazing program with us, and look forward to all of our success with NOICS. And we know that it doesn't end here with Julia either. She will be on that Facebook group. She will be sending those emails out. So she's somebody that we have a warm, loving connection with, and we look forward to that growing in the future as well. So thank you, Julia, for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I must just say, I have loved meeting everybody. I mean, I know there's some of you I've only met online, but for everybody I met in person, I think the NOICS family is a really beautiful family, and I'm really enjoying working with you.
It is beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I will email out a link to everyone who's registered for the call, as well as the other links that go with it. Thanks again, Julia. Have a great night heading off to sport, won't you?
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Have a sensational day. Bye-bye.